You are Locked On Wild POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is good to be back. It is Locked On Wild POSTCAST time as the Minnesota Wild take care of business. In one of their final tune-ups of the postseason, they beat the Chicago Blackhawks by a score of 7-2. 7 goals tonight after 8 goals against Winnipeg in the only 2 games of this preseason in which the starters played really at all. Look, it's preseason, but also, you know, there is a lot that we can take from what we saw over the course of the preseason so far. Now, we'll get into the roster stuff, I'm sure. We will talk about some of the different looks we saw tonight. But I wanted to start with the big news of this one. Jared Spurgeon scoring 2 goals in his return to the lineup after missing basically the entirety of last season. We've talked about on this show, for everybody that tunes in on a daily basis, all the everydayers, we've talked about how Jared Spurgeon can be, I think, a really big piece for this team this year that they just didn't have in their arsenal this past season. And so I thought he looked really good in this one. Obviously, he got the offense going with a couple of goals, but the thing that I liked, and I know it's Chicago, I know it's Chicago, but the thing that I liked after a slow first is that the floodgates just opened up and the Wild just continued to push. They didn't rest on their laurels. They just continued to attack wave after wave after wave. And if I'm a head coach, you're not going to win all of your games, especially if you're Chicago. But I'd be a little peeved with what we saw in tonight's game, because even in the preseason, you don't want to just get throttled when you're out there. You want at minimum for the compete level to be there. And for Chicago, like, they just got taken out behind the shed after the first period and just throttled by lines that continued to generate chances every time they were out on the ice. So that was good to see. Special teams did some really good things, I thought, and I have some thoughts on what we saw, especially from the power play, because I really keyed in on that in this one tonight. But I just want to start by looking up and down at some of the notable performances from this game. And then what I want to do is I kind of want to go through what the plan is going to be for these, as well as the additional post-game episode that we'll be bringing for you every single game this season. So kind of want to go through the process, because obviously we're starting way earlier with these than we usually do. But there is a method to the madness for that here this season. So the notable performances: Joel Eriksson scored in this one and was 12 of 18 in the faceoff circle, played 17-28, had 3 shots, did have a penalty, but he had 2 hits, 2 takeaways. Marcus Foligno, 14-39. He had 2 shots on goal, but he also had 4 hits in this one tonight. Freddy Gaudreau got on the board with a goal in just an absolute bizarro scrum in front of the net. Chicago tried to bat the puck out of the air multiple times tonight, and it didn't work either of the times that they tried. The scrum in front, in which Freddy Gaudreau was able to kind of tap the puck in, after a Chicago player literally tried to like volleyball spike the puck straight down. Didn't work. And then later, a Spurgeon shot, the Chicago player put his hand up and tried to deflect it, and it goes straight down into the net. I don't know what the I don't know what the thought process was in that regard. Kirill Kaprizov tonight. A goal, 3 assists. He had 2 shots on goal, 1 blocked shot. He had a hit. He had a takeaway. He played 16 minutes and just looked like Kirill. Jakub Lauko had one of the most aggressive stat lines of anybody on the team because he got hurt and he came back. He had a goal. He had an assist. He was a +2. He had 4 shots on goal. He had a hit and a takeaway in 8 minutes. This dude is going to fit in very nicely on this roster because he is boundless, endless energy. And I think if it ends up that Marat Huznadinov and him are paired on the same line, I think that combination is going to work fantastic. Liam Ogren had 3 shots on goal and had a takeaway as well. He played 15 minutes, nearly scored on a backhand between the pads shot on the Chicago goalie. Nearly scored on that one. It would have been a disgusting goal, but Ogren just continuing to do Liam Ogren things. Marco Rossi had a goal and an assist, 3 shots on goal, 2 hits. He was 7 of 13 in the faceoff circle in 12 minutes, 26 seconds on the ice. Yakov Trenin doing his thing, 3 hits, 15-32 on the ice. I want to talk about because the broadcast keyed in on this. We're going to come back to the combination of Trenin, Foligno, and Rossi because I have a thought. Matt Zuccarello had 3 assists, had 2 shots on goal, and he played 13 minutes. And then on the defensive side, Zach Bogosian and Declan Chisholm had shot itis tonight. They both had 4 shots on goal out there on the ice. Jared Spurgeon, 2 goals. He had 5 shots on net. He was a +3. This evening, Brock Faber had 2 assists, 2 block shots, and played 23 minutes, 56 seconds. Filip Gustavsson, 19 of 21 in net, had the early goal, which was a bad rebound that he just kicked out to the side, and Chicago capitalized immediately. The only other goal given up was a Connor Bedard from basically parallel to the net with time expiring on a power play to end the second period. Beyond that, he looked really good on the penalty kill, I thought, and it seems like he's starting to tighten things up a little bit as we get closer to the season. But we have a lot to get to here this evening. And so new feature on StreamYard that I really like is the ability to star comments and come back to them. So we are going to get to as many as we can here this evening. But I wanted to talk about the plan for post games for the season, because obviously last year we waited about a half hour after the game was done to start postcasts. This year we are going to just go in right after the game is done because we are adding a complimentary episode. I know a lot of people like to watch the thoughts of John Hines and of the players in particular on the post-game show. We're going to incorporate those into the postcast for one. So once I kind of scour through and see that the post-game remarks have been given, we're going to play them live for you here on the postcast. And so we're going to do that. But then what I'm going to do is take the post-game audio from John Hines, and we are going to do what we call 3 things. And I'm going to take 3 key bullet points from John Hines post-game, and we are going to dive into them. If Hines says a particular player looks really good and a line combination is working well, we're going to dive in and find out. And so we're going to hit you with that 1-2 punch in the post game this year of the postcast after games, with also going with the 3 things first thing in the morning the next day. And so you get that nice sandwich. If you can't make the postcast after games, you get the nice right away in the morning being able to get some of John Hines' thoughts and then me reacting to them and providing evidence for or against whatever point is being made. So, little tweak to the post-game format, but I think it's going to work out. I think it's going to work out very well. All right, so let's get to a couple of thoughts here. We start off with a familiar one. Marcus Johansson. Did Johansson do anything in the game tonight? Honestly, it was pretty similar to what we've seen. A couple of shots on net in 15 minutes on ice, but I am going to give Johansson a little bit of credit because he was battling a few instances that I saw. He was battling for the puck along the boards. But here's the thing with Marcus Johansson, and we all know this. Like this is pretty common knowledge, is that Marcus Johansson's performance is going to have to be substantially better than what it was last season, because you can't have a guy on the roster, especially in as high a profile role as the second line wing is. You can't have a guy in that spot whose only contribution is zone entries. Like you just can't have a guy whose only contribution to his line is getting the puck in. And so he is going to need to up his performance. And we saw this with some of Freddy Gaudreau's comments leading up to the game and throughout the preseason. I'm hoping that those guys are starting to get the picture that they have to be better or their spots are going to be up for grabs. And I know as it sits right now, I know the roster looks as though guys like Riley Height and Liam Ogren are going to be on the outside looking in. For my sanity, we have to trust that if players are not performing, that they will be replaced. Will that happen? We'll have to wait and see, but we have to trust that rhetoric that has been mentioned since the beginning of last offseason, or since the end of last season, that rhetoric has been, if these guys don't produce, they're going to be replaced in the lineup. We just have to trust it. And, if it doesn't come to pass that way, you can be assured that people that cover the team are going to rightfully be calling out why. Why is this notion that we were told at the end of last season has become a reality? Why are we not seeing that come to fruition with players clearly not holding up their end of the bargain in key spots? The fact that Freddy is a wing on the fourth line, I think he has kind of realized that there really isn't another spot in the lineup that he can fall to if his performance doesn't get better. And honestly, as a wing on the fourth line with, as of right now, Murat Huznadinov and Jakub Lauko, I kind of dig it. I know we would like to see Huznadinov higher up in the lineup, but the reality of the situation right now is that as long as Ryan Hartman performs in a top six role, he's going to get that opportunity. So it's about, at this point, players holding up their end of the bargain. That's the big theme here. That should be the big theme going into the season and as the season unfolds. If players hold up their end of the bargain, they're going to continue to get to be in the spots that they are. If they don't, you've got guys that are going to be able to take those spots in the lineup. So We will have to wait and see, but I promise you guys, I will be leaning into that because we saw it last year. If I have to chart performance for players every single game of the season, I'm going to lean into that. We'll keep the questions coming if stuff like that happens. All right, let's get to some of the comments here because Freddy had a good one here asking about how Matt Boldy is doing. So from what I have heard, from what I gather from what has gone on over the last few days, there is potential for Matt Boldy to even suit up in Friday's game against Chicago. He's getting close. He's day-to-day at this point. He's making good progress in his return. There's a chance that he gets a little tune-up coming up against Chicago on Friday. If not, I am, I guess, led to believe that he should be good to go then against Columbus. Like if he is to the point that the coaching staff is saying that he is close to ready, leads me to believe that he will be he'll be ready to rock on Friday. So or Thursday. So I think that will be the hope, and I guess we'll adjust from there if needed. I want to get to one, and I appreciate everybody who is hopping in. Our usual cast of commenters here: Trav, Tom, Ron, Diane, Swiffer T, Wetjet Mop, Shark Boy Ben, Hoptics is here. The whole crew as we get going. Tracy's here as we get going with postcasts after games once again. I want to go to this point because this was brought up in the broadcast, and this is brought up in the broadcast, and I think this is something that will be very interesting to watch as the season unfolds. Urban is here. I see you, Urban, and Mark is here. Rossi and Hartman did switch, and so we got the Kaprizov, Rossi, Zuccarello combination, and we got a little Kaprizov, Hartman, Zuccarello here tonight because I think there's chemistry between Marcus Foligno and Yakov Trenin. I think that was pretty evident in tonight's game as Foligno was doing some big hit hunting, and Trenin actually, he is, I think, sneaky good around the net too, as kind of a net front guy. I like those two together, but I think we all kind of figure that a Foligno, Hartman, Trenin line would be just an absolute pain to go up against. And so we want to see a little bit of that throughout the season. I think, and again, if this isn't right, we'll discuss it. I kind of feel like John Hines is going to be a little bit of a card player this year because we saw a bunch of these different lineup looks. And what we know about John Hines from last season, he's not afraid to mix combinations up during a game. If he is looking for a particular thing at a particular point in a game, it would not shock me at all if we see one combination to start the game and a different combination at a key point in a game later. Like, who's to say you maybe go goal chasing with Kaprizov, Hartman, and Zuccarello early in the game, and then you go to Hartman, Foligno, and Trenin trying to wear a team down as the game wears on in the third period. And I'd be all in favor of that. I would like to see, because big thing with hockey, just because a line combination works in a particular point in a game, you might have a player who is just absolutely lighting it up that is on a different line, and you just want to mad scientist it to see if that combination could maybe lead to you scoring a goal to where your opponent is like, they didn't start with that combination, did they? So it'll be interesting to see if we do get a little of that mad scientist approach from John Hines with the line combinations this year, because we want to see Marco Rossi get some of those top 6 opportunities. John Hines has said that he will. We want to see, this lineup that can hit you with a couple of different scoring lines and can just flood you with torrential scoring opportunities. And they did that to Chicago tonight. So I'm interested to see what happens. Now, one thing that I do want to mention, we're going to sneak a break in here as well. Bill Guerin alluding to the fact that Ryan Hartman is 15 pounds lighter than he was last season. Guerin said that he spent a lot of time in the offseason putting himself in position for being a more consistent part of the roster, being a more consistent part of the team. And it's crazy to say that about a guy that scored 21 goals and is a player that I think a lot of people like what he brings to the table. So the fact that he got himself a little slimmer shows a commitment to getting ready for things to unfold here as the season gets going. Now, ultimately, it all depends on how the players play on the ice, but Bill Guerin underscored the fact that a lot of guys on the team were very ticked off as to how the season went last year and are looking to avoid having that happen again. Let's get to some other comments here. Trav, percent chance that Ogren heads to the cornfields. I feel it's pretty likely because, let's talk about Ogren and let's talk about Riley Heidt as well. Because as much as we want to be team, give these guys a chance, what I want to see in the preseason, because most of the time the prospects are playing together. And the coaching staff does that intentionally to see which of the prospects are the ones that stand out of the group and are the ones that you can say, this might be a guy that deserves a look with the rest of the regular lineup. Now, as a City Life project, as Isha wonderfully says here, Damon Hunt has put himself in position to make the squad because he is one of those players that has stood out in preseason action. Graham Clark is another. He is another guy that has really impressed with what he's done so far this preseason. And some of these guys that were battling for spots, Jakub Lauko looked great all preseason and put himself, and I don't know that his spot in the lineup was really ever up for grabs, but he looked great and he's added offense. I'll talk a little bit about that coming up. He's looked fantastic, but that's what preseason is about, is having prospects step up, stand out, separate yourself from the rest of the prospect pool. Riley Heidt really didn't do that. And so I know there were a lot of people surprised that he was sent back already here in the preseason. He didn't really do anything to kind of separate himself from the rest of the group. And so it's not that he's not talented, because he very much is. But let's just remember that he is a 19-year-old. Like, dude is very young. And he's going to get another opportunity next year. It's all about kind of seeing where he's at in the process. And if he separates himself from the rest of the group, he's going to have a chance to be in the mix. Liam Ogren has, I think, done better than what Riley Height showed, but at the end of the day, Bill Guerin is at the point that he has shown no inclination to move on from either Marcus Johansson or Freddy Gaudreau right now. That's the key. That's the important distinction. He's shown no indication of moving on from them right now. If their performance, and I think this is more centered on Marcus Johansson than it is on Freddy Gaudreau. If their performance doesn't jive with what they are supposed to be doing, that I think is when Liam Ogren's chance or Graham Clark's chance comes. And obviously with injuries. When injuries happen, then those guys are going to get opportunities to come in and to fill in those spots. I think right now, the two guys that are most likely to be the injury call-ups for the Wild are Graham Clark and Liam Ogren. And I feel like you're pretty comfortable with both guys at this point. Clark is just a let-it-rip kind of a shooter. Ogren, obviously, we've seen him do the same thing. So I feel like those are probably the two guys most likely to get call-ups if injuries persist. So I would say those two. And then it's going to be interesting to see on defense because John Hines, he talked pretty glowingly about what Damon Hunt brings to the table. And so that could mean that his opportunity, he might be one of the guys that breaks camp with the team. We'll I guess wait and see. How bad is Graham Clark's injury? Blocked a shot and couldn't come back in on Sunday's game. Isha, this is a great question, and I don't know if I've seen any updates on what his status is. So let's just check the old. It probably won't tell me because they probably haven't done anything from a. Nope. I would imagine he'll head down to Iowa and we'll just see what his status is as the season progresses. Damon Hunt over Declan Chisholm. This is interesting because I think I still am of the belief that Declan Chisholm is a good offensive defenseman. Can be. I don't know. Maybe this is finally the time. That John Merrill gets buried in Iowa. You can bury a percentage of that contract. I think 1.1 of the $1.2 million that you can just stash at the Iowa level. Wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if maybe he gets put on waivers once the preseason is done. If you feel that strongly about how Damon Hunt has performed, which it seems like the Wild do, maybe you just make that decision. Damon Hunt tonight, 16 minutes, 28 seconds of ice time. He was a +3. He had one shot on goal, one block, one hit. And he played a little bit on the penalty kill, but mostly just on even strength and was a +3. That tracks. I think that would be. I think you'd be okay with that, assuming that there aren't defensive injuries. So I would lean more towards Hunt over Merrill, but I guess we'll see. Third line of Hartman, Foligno, and yes, my guess would be that we see that Foligno, Trenin, and Hartman combo. My guess is we see that at points throughout the season, but we also see Marco Rossi there too. It's all going to depend on if Ryan Hartman can keep that top line humming. If Ryan Hartman can be part of that top line and they're producing and scoring goals, John Hines is going to likely keep that group intact. If they struggle, that's when we'll see some changes. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see Ryan Hartman and Marco Rossi with those two. But with Rossi and Foligno and Trennan, they generated a few pretty good chances as a trio. And so some of this line combinations that I look at and hope to see and question why other combinations are being used, those lines end up creating chances. And if they're creating chances, then that's what it's all about, I guess. We'll get to more of your comments as we continue tonight's Locked on Wild postcast. Preseason reps for me as well. Getting back into the swing of things here as the Minnesota Wild take down the Chicago Blackhawks, a touchdown and a safety tonight in Minnesota as the Wild pick up a 7-2 win over Chicago. We have much more to get to here on tonight's Locked on Wild postcast. So stick with us. You're listening to Locked on Wild, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You don't have to have 90 billion tabs open like I do when I'm tracking my fantasy teams. You can just do it all in one place, which leads to a very seamless betting transition. Best of all, you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. It doesn't even have to be a winner. One bet, and you have $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So head to FanDuel.com today to get everything started. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Today's postcast is also brought to you by Game Time. NHL season is right around the corner. College football is in full swing, and the NFL season is underway as well. There is no better time to find yourself great tickets by heading to Game Time. They make the ticket buying experience as stress-free as possible. More time to tailgate, more time to pregame, more time to live it up, seeing your favorite team in action. Plus, Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Continuing tonight's Locked on Wild postcast as the Minnesota Wild pick up a 7-2 win over the Chicago Blackhawks. And we've seen most of the Wild regulars in the last two preseason games, and that has led to 8 goals against Winnipeg and now 7 goals against Chicago tonight. And so, look, it comes down to if guys, I think, just kind of get the memo at the urgency that needs to start out this season. Bill Guerin talked about it in the interview that he did with Anthony LaPanta and Ryan Carter during the second period. He said, we got to get out. We got to get out to a better start to start this season. Could not be more of an obvious need for this team because we know what's coming. Not this season, but next will be the final year of Kirill Kaprizov's deal. And signs in the right direction is the name of the game for the Wilds over the course of the next 12, however many months. Just continue to show progress as we move towards that inevitable decision. But just looking at some of the other reactions for tonight's game, Freddy looked good. Gus looked good. Enjoyed watching Huznadinov give it 100%. Spurgeon making a statement in his first game back. Kaprizov scoring before the third week of December. I think Kirill will get off to a much better start this year because he is not injured, at least at this point. And so that should lead to him being able to more readily contribute to what the team is looking to do, because it just looked off at the start of last season, to say the least. Optics. Jakub Lauko looks like he could easily be a 20-goal scorer. His stat history is very misleading. He was just like hardly ever used by the Boston Bruins. He was a fourth-line guy, but a fourth-line guy in the sense of just give us a little change of pace from what the top three lines do. Like, he played penalty kill time tonight. What was the final tally for Lauko on the penalty kill? He played 40 seconds shorthanded, but then again, he only played 8 minutes in this one, and he still had as many different things as he did. But we talked about Jakub Lauko in one of the previous preseason games, looking to add more offense to his arsenal here this season. And the thing that I like about what Lauko does is he slides right up to the net. Like, he had the one shot that got blocked when he came back into the game, but he slid right up to the faceoff circle and just unleashed a shot on the net. It didn't go in, but it absolutely, it caught the goalie. And so if he continues to just up the offense, he's going to be a very valuable commodity for this Minnesota Wild team, a team that, let's not forget, had 3 different fourth-line guys on last year's team score like 4 or 5 points in the final 30 games of the season. I feel like if Jakub Lauko stays healthy and if the offense continues to get better as the season goes, he not only could get double-digit points, he could probably get you double-digit goals on that fourth line. And that's where you create some of that scoring depth. I'm going to jump to this one because Hoptics brings up a really good point. In like this, the desire, because he's the captain, to rush Jared Spurgeon back into just handling all of the different duties that he does. My personal opinion is I feel like this is a really good opportunity to just take one thing off the plate, because you have Brock Faber, who is pretty adept at running a power play, having never done it before in just one season of doing so. He's pretty adept. Declan Chisholm has some good touch on the power play quarterback side of things. Unless it just doesn't work with those two guys, I would like to see that be the direction the Wild go, as opposed to just having that be another thing that Jared Spurgeon does. You're going to use him on the penalty kill. I understand that, but let's just ease in a little bit, as opposed to just like, you don't turn the hose on full blast after it has been, after the long winter. You don't turn it on full blast. You kind of ease into it a little bit to get the water flow going. And I hope that's the general path that we see. But that's going to depend entirely on what John Hines does early on in the season. Can Lauko just say his name so you can cut it into the Brandy Duhame promo? Stay tuned. I'm working on a couple of different players to be able to assist for the intro. We'll see if we get him. But I know the intro just sounds too plain with having Duhaime on there for a while and now not. So we'll see. Hoptics again with another good point. Kuznetsov is relentless. He's a honey badger and seems really frustrating to play against. He just constantly is hounding the puck and seems like he plays in a different gear, which is why I do love the idea of, at least to start the season, putting him with Jakub Lauko, because those two both work really hard. Not saying Freddy Gaudreau doesn't, but those two really work very hard, and I think their speed together is going to play pretty nicely out there on the ice. These will not be the only 4-line combinations we see this season, but I think having a little 4th-line continuity, unless one of those 3 centers in front of Kuznetsov gets hurt, I think having a little 4th-line continuity is not a bad thing at all. So we will we'll see, but I think Kuznetsov can bring some really good things. His numbers tonight, he played 14 minutes. He was 4 of 7 on the faceoff circle and was just flying around the place. He did, I think, some really good things defensively. Swiffer T, wet jet mop. Murat shadows puck carriers perfectly. They have no options when he's on them. He's a cover corner. He's a cover corner in the NFL. He goes and locks people down, pursues them with the puck. Bingo. Great on the penalty kill, too. He did get 3 minutes and 51 seconds on the penalty kill. That led all Minnesota Wild forwards tonight. 3:51 on the PK. And he was great at it. And so you look at some of that. Shark Boy Ben is right on here. This is not a team... This is not a team that is, I think, unless they just are ravaged by injuries, that is going to be so exposed like they were last year. Like, I just get the sense that you're going to see guys up and down the lineup contributing more this year. Now, does that mean that everybody's going to be doing it? No. But I think it's going to be more consistent this year, especially in the bottom of the lineup. I think if your bottom six is some combination of Foligno, Trenin, Lauko, Kuznetsov, Freddy, and Hartman or Rossi, honestly, there's a little something there. Will the top 6 be able to score? That's arguably the biggest question heading into the season. But I think that bottom 6 is going to be interesting for the Wild this year. Better team than last year. I like the all caps here too. I like the enthusiasm, Urban. You know me. We'll ride with it if they are. I'm not gonna do the thing that I did last year. I'm not gonna do the greater good. I'm gonna just ride with it this year. I'm just gonna buckle in. I'm just gonna get in the roller coaster, and I'm just gonna ride. I'm just gonna ride with it this year, as opposed to, unless they start off the way that they did. If they start off the season like they did last year, then I'm getting off the ride. But it would be hard to be worse. It would be hard to be worse than they were at the start of the year last year. So I guess we'll see. Freddie had a couple of good over-unders that I wanted to get to here. Will Freddie have more points than Johansson this year? Honestly, hear me out on this. I feel like with Gaudreau, I feel like all of the pressure is off of him. And is he the guy that he was under Dean, where he's like a 14 to a 19 goal scorer? Probably not. But I feel like having him on the 4th line to start the year, having him play wing, I feel like all of the pressure is off. And so he can, and I'll talk about this when we get to his player preview, Freddy can just go out there and play now. Like tonight, he played 228 on the penalty kill. He was 2 of 3 in the face-off circle. He had the goal. He was a +2, and he had one shot on goal in which he scored. That was the weird tic-tac-toe goal that he tipped in. He's not being relied upon anywhere close to the amount that he was being relied upon by Dean. And so I feel like the pressure's off. And so Freddy can just go play, and I think playing with 2 guys in Murat and Jakub Lauko, I think is going to help him. I think that's going to help him just focus on being a part of a real, like, speedy type line. So it wouldn't surprise me if Freddy ups his performance after last season. It wouldn't surprise me, honestly, because I don't think he's going to be in a position to have to do a lot of what he had to do over the last few seasons. And I think that's going to improve his play. Now, on the Marcus Johansson side of things, I still don't really know, because we charted it for a whole season. And I know there's the tangible effect of players performing better in contract years, but he just isn't like a thoroughbred shooter. He just isn't the type of player that I don't think. Anita got it right on. Thank you. Marcus Johansson's a floater. And I don't feel like that is a good fit for that line unless they just continue to bear downhill. Like, Johansson is fine as an odd man rush type player when you can just go like straight line towards the opposing net. But I don't think he's a good fit if you're just camped out in the zone trying to hunker down and let it rip on the net. I don't think he's that type of guy. So I'm going to have to be proven wrong, but I understand why the Wild are going with Johansson, Boldy, and Eriksson for the same reason that they're going with Kaprizov, Hartman, and Zuccarello to start the year, is hoping to rekindle a little bit of that magic. But if we get, 10, 15 games into the season and it just isn't working, don't be surprised if we see the reuniting of Kaprizov, Boldy, and Eriksson. And then at that point, maybe you go to Zuccarello, Hartman, and Rossi, and you see if those combinations can get it done. Statistically, those were the 2 best line combinations the Wild had last year. So we could see that, but if it doesn't work like extraordinarily well for Marcus Johansson this year, he'll be gone by the time the season is done at the latest, if not earlier than that. And it wouldn't surprise me. How would I throw this out into the universe? It wouldn't surprise me at all if things are kind of stagnant by November. It would not be a surprise to me at all if Marcus Johansson is maybe the one included in the Bill Guerin hockey trade that we've seen every season since he took over as GM. The good old-fashioned one-for-one hockey trade to try to clear. So we'll see, but that second line wing spot is as upgradable, I think, as any spot in the entire NHL. Like, we've known that is a spot that needs better production since midway through the season. So we'll see if we get it. Let's just go through some of the other comments here. Got to that one. I'm going to get to this point from Trav. Keep in mind, Height and Ogren are going to be getting 26 plus minutes per night, first line minutes if they play down in Iowa, and Guerin doesn't know where to put the prospects. Anyway, yeah, I feel very strongly that I don't want to see players like Liam Ogren or Riley Heidt have to be wedged into a fourth line role for the sake of getting them on the ice. They're not those types of players. This is the problem that we saw, I think, with both Sammy Walker and Adam Beckman over the last couple of seasons, is that with the exception of Sammy Walker, who did get some top six time, the Wild tried to kind of force players into a fourth line role just for the sake of filling a roster spot. Liam Ogren's not that type of player. Riley Heidt is not that type of player. And as we talked about earlier in the postcast, Riley Heidt just didn't stand out in the preseason. And so the best thing for him is to go back to the OHL, light it up for another season. The thing that he now knows is the speed of the NHL. He knows now what the NHL game is like. And so he can go back to the O for a full season and just do his thing, knowing in the back of his head that where he needs to get to. For Liam Ogren, he is, I think, right on the cusp, if not like ready to contribute. But he's way better suited getting top line minutes every night than he is just being like a 13th forward on this team. And so I don't want to see those guys if they're not going to be, did I say OHL? Thank you. WHL. There are too many leagues. There are far too many leagues in all levels of hockey. So thank you, Shark Boy Ben. The WHL. So send Liam back to the dub to just play a full season, knowing now what it takes at the NHL level and how to get to that point. Same thing for Liam Ogren. Let him play top line minutes every night that he's not here. If you suffer an injury in the lineup, move somebody down, slot him in up top. But don't pigeonhole guys just to, fill a spot. We got a fourth line spot we got to fill. Well, you've got guys like Travis Boyd and Devin Shore. You've got guys that can fill fourth line spots. Liam Ogren is not that type of player. So I'm if that type of a spot isn't open, then I don't want those guys trying to fill that type of role. I want to get to this because we've seen this from Kirill over the last couple of seasons, and Hoptics is right. His English is noticeably better heading into this season than it was last year. He has been, I don't know if he's using Rosetta Stone. I don't know if he just is listening to Lockdown Wild every day and pulling in cues from me. But it's way better to the point that he, doesn't need an interpreter anymore, and he can pretty clearly answer questions that are asked of him from the media, from just anybody in general. And so, that's kind of a fun part of the story of Kirill, is seeing him be able to improve in that area. And, it's just part of his maturation process as he continues throughout his NHL process. But it is very noticeable, and it'll be interesting to see how much that becomes, how much that gets furthered as the season unfolds. Well, I'm looking at the posted audio on the Minnesota Wild website. They may not have a John Hines presser tonight, but if that's the case, then we won't have a three things for you this evening. But obviously that'll start on October 10th against Columbus. Let's go to Swiffer T Wet Jet Mop. Who's going to be the 13th forward? So at this point, you've got Kirill, Boldy when he returns, which it sounds likely is going to be at the start of the season. Kirill, Boldy, Eriksson, that's 3. Zuccarello, Foligno, Hartman, that's 6. Trennan, Gaudreau, Johansson, that's 9. Kuznetsov, Rossi, Lauko is 12. At this point, it'll be interesting to see who they end up going with, because just like what I said, I would rather not see Ogren just. This is the same thing that is going on with this 3 goalie rotation. I'm going to talk about that for a couple of minutes too. I don't know if you bring a guy like Travis Boyd or Graham Clark. I don't know. I guess we'll see. It wouldn't surprise me at all. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we see Ogren make the team, but I don't know. It would be either him or Graham Clark or like a Travis Boyd or maybe Ben Jones too, kind of a utility guy. There are some options, but again, if you're going to have a 13th forward, you'd like it to be somebody that can fill more of a bottom 6 role as opposed to just stashing somebody that's going to fill in on the top 6 on your bench as opposed to in your lineup. So that's my preference for a 13th forward, is somebody who can fill in, but you're not just stashing talent on the bench and waiting for a rainy day. Let's talk about this 3 goalie thing a little bit to finish off, because I have some thoughts. I wish the Wild would have just said, we are going to most likely use 3 goalies this year, because that's what this appears to be. That's what this should be as the season unfolds, is if you have situations in which the schedule in Iowa gets tight, then you have Jesper on the in the Iowa lineup. If you have, somebody banged up, one of the 2 goalies banged up in the NHL lineup, then you bring Jesper up to help out there. But this whole notion of carrying 3 goalies for the entire season, please don't. That roster spot is too valuable. Like they're going to need somebody to be able to fill that spot. And if you have Jesper in that role and not playing, you are preventing yourself from carrying other players on the roster, like because of the cap situation. So I just would like to see it be better utilized than just carrying around a 3rd goalie for the sake of carrying around a 3rd goalie. But I don't know. Call me old-fashioned, I guess. I don't know. It seems like they're pretty gung-ho about it. I just wish they would have recategorized it as we're going to use 3 goalies this year, as opposed to saying we're going to carry 3 all season, because those are two completely different things. Those are 2 completely different philosophies. So I don't know. We'll see. Marc-Andre Fleury did get some ice maintenance time in here tonight. So that was fun. He can he'll probably win a gold medal for the Canadian curling team at this rate. So I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out what they do. It wouldn't surprise me if they carry 3 to start the year, because they're playing like 8 road games in a row. But if you have a big homestand, you can call him up and down. You don't have to carry him on the roster for the entirety of the season. I'm seeing reports from, especially from Tracy and others, that the Wild's John Hines postgame has been posted. So I will try to find that so that I can do the three things bit, because that would be fun. But I'm just not seeing it on their website as opposed to on their app. Well, we'll get that ironed out. And we'll have three things for you in the morning. But beyond that, I'm going to also leave you with one thing every game. One thing to take with you tomorrow and beyond regarding this Minnesota Wild team. I think for tonight, I will key in on the motor and work ethic of guys like Jakub Lauko and Murat Huznadinov and Marco Rossi and Brock Faber. And let's just key in on those four. It's not to say that the other guys aren't working hard either, but those four especially. That should be the engine of this team. Is we may not have as much talent as some of the other teams, especially in the Central Division. We might not have the talents that those teams have, but if you come in here thinking you're going to outwork us, you are sorely mistaken. Guys from Lauko to Huznadinov to Rossi to Faber showed it again in tonight's game. They motor and they never give up. And if we can get that going, if that can permeate through the Wild roster, that's where you start to see the switch flipped, and you go from like, ugh, this team looks, to, well, wasn't the Wild's night tonight, but they battled. They competed, and they gave everything. They gave everything out there that they had. Because you're not going to win every game, you're not going to lose every game, but the key is, are you outworking the other team? Because you might be less talented, but I have run into this in my walk of life every day of my life. I may not be as talented as others are, but I'm never going to get outworked. You don't have enough talent to win on talent alone. Herb Brooks, boom. Will with the zinger and the clincher here tonight. Trav, thank you for being a warrior on the Denver side. I'm excited to see how Zeev does this year. I'm excited about the potential to get a chance to chat with him this year. Stay tuned on that regard. I got a lot that I got to do before the season even gets going next week, folks. So there are going to be a lot of episodes coming at you here from the end of this week to next week. We've got crossovers with pretty much the rest of the Central Division hosts coming up here between this week and next. So stay tuned for those. We're going to get all these player previews done. We've also got our new bits that will be debuting here this year that will be unfurling next week as well. So the season is finally here. Regular season begins in earnest next week. So appreciate everybody hopping in here to our postcast once again. Great to get the cobwebs off on the live post game. And I hope everybody enjoys that we are doing things a little earlier than we did last year. Now, as mentioned, going forward, we will be incorporating the post-game comments into the postcast. So whatever is said by John Hines, some of the other players, we'll get that all in for you in the postcast. And then, of course, I'll react to it as well. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Hit that like button before you head out here for the night. And we will have a lot coming at you here the rest of the week into next week as well. So we appreciate all your support here to Locked on Wild. Minnesota Wild win by a score of 7-2 in one of their final preseason games. And you can hear all about that and more by subscribing to Locked on Wild and following along with us through the rest of the season. We have new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.